Some of the most important things I've learned from Dragon Ball Nexus have been taught to me by other people who were kind enough to take me under their wing and let me, hang out with them as they taught me. That's why I'm even making this video today, because their teachings have helped me and inspired me to start my channel. But this hasn't happened to all of you. While in this content form, I can't necessarily take you all in like the people who taught me, but I can impart the teachings they did and the things I figured out myself. Don't get me wrong, there's still a ton of people who are much better than me and know the game more, but I'm still fairly certain that I can teach the people who are newer to the game a thing or two. So, let's break into this. I'll be tackling this from a perspective of levels. This game's like a Schlep reference. It has layers of complexity and understanding. In this video, I'll be explaining things on the surface level and in a more basic sense before diving into deeper layers in later episodes. This means that we'll be starting off with how the game is played. Like other fighting games, the player who reduces their opponent's health to 0 first wins in Dragon Ball Nexus's combat. To do this, you have to combine basic attacks with flashy and powerful moves. That's the core of Dragon Ball Nexus's combat. On the highest level, that's it. But if we dig deeper, we can gain a better understanding of the game's mechanics. Playing the game without fighting is pretty simple and it can be pretty fun on its own. However, the main meat of the demo, yes, this game is still a demo as of writing this, is the combat. When you enter combat, you'll want to middle click or press either K or L on PC, I forget whether it's K or L, it's one of the two. And on controller, you hit L3 or the equivalent on other consoles. I'm going to be using the PlayStation terminology and controller layout, so Xbox layers, just convert it in your head, I guess. Once you're locked on, you'll notice a few things in the UI. Your opponent's health and ki, your own health and ki, these two little yellow boxes which we'll get into in a minute, and these 7 move slots. These are going to be your moves, special attack skills, super attacks, whatever you refer to them as. They fill a similar role to the attacks in other Dragon Ball games. These are your big damage dealers and can make or break a character. Let's take a second to talk about basic combat before we get into those moves. When locked on, M1 or square is going to start attacking. You can mix in M2 or triangles to perform a few different combo routes, which I'll show on screen here. And here's a little aside, I didn't script this because I forgot to, but each of these basically has somewhat of a separate role. Like you can do this one if you want to do a knockback, you can do these two if you want to do like a more drawn out combo and extend your hit count, and then this one knocks them away at the end, but this one doesn't, and then you can, keep doing other stuff. And then if you want to do the full auto combo, that's that. And I'm pretty sure that this one is a guard break. I'm not entirely sure, but it also could be that this one breaks through those like M1 clashes. I should explain that first. So, when you're fighting somebody and you two are going up against each other, you'll sometimes be mashing buttons and, hitting each other over and over again, and you'll get into like a stalemate where neither of you really comes out on top and prevents the other one from hitting. So, what you do in that scenario is you try to get the maximum amount of hits possible, and I think that's what this one is for. Anyway, the key to these combos is stringing them along as long as you can. You can only press M2 or triangle twice before the third combo doesn't let you do so, so at this point you might want to switch it up with a move or a knockback. Speaking of knockbacks, there's a few different ways to do this. You can hold M1 or square to charge up a heavy hit, which unfortunately does not break blocks. You can do a few different combo strings, and the main way of knocking people back is moves. There's also 2 different kinds of knockbacks, one being light at the end of this combo right here, for example, and the other one being heavy. Charge hits and combo enders and moves do this one. You want to avoid knocking people back for the most part, because while there are ways to follow up on it, there's also ways to get out of combos if they end in knockbacks. That's going to bring us to these little yellow boxes below our character portrait. These are indicators of 2 separate moves, Shockwave and Burst Counter. Shockwave is the most powerful get-off-me tool in the game, full stop. How it works is if you hit C or square and X at the same time, you'll spend a chunk of ki to blast people away. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but ki is this little blue bar here. However, you can hold S or down on the left stick to perform it by consuming a small amount of your health, resulting in a much stronger and quicker shockwave that does a heavy knockback instead of the light one the ki shockwave does. This is my go-to option and is essentially better in every way to the ki shockwave. The health consumed is pretty minimal, so that's also a huge bonus. bonus. Both variations of this move do come with downsides, however. Once used, it goes on cooldown for 15 seconds. You can tell that it goes on cooldown by this little yellow box, this one specifically getting grayed out, and then when it comes off of cooldown, that goes yellow again. Despite how it sounds, a lot can happen in 15 seconds, and a massive combo is one of them. This is why a lot of people bait out shockwaves, essentially forcing their opponent to use their most powerful survival tool before closing in with an insane combo. The other box down here is Burst Counter. You'll hear me refer to it as Rush Return in some of my videos because I found out its official name after giving it a name in my head. I'm still gonna continue calling it Rush Return unofficially because I think it's a better name. Anyways, Rush Return is a pretty versatile move. When you activate it by hitting B on a keyboard or L2 and up on the left stick and cross, you turn into a hyper-armored heat-seeking missile and blast towards your opponent. Hitting them does a bit of damage, but the attack is blockable, or at least it's supposed to be. Sometimes when you hit a block with this, you'll both recoil. However, for some reason, you can also just mash basic attacks after getting this move blocked. This lets you instantly combo your opponent and means this move has basically no downsides if you mash fast enough. So why is this here? Why can we do this? Well, it can be used after you get knocked back while you're still flying backwards to quickly change course. Be careful not to waste it though, people will read it a lot of the time and often block after a knockback instead of following up with more damage. This one also has a 15-second cooldown, I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure of the exact time, but they seem about even. With these tools, you can pull off some pretty nasty combo strings and escape some deadly situations, but what do you do afterwards? The answer is moves. These moves can be categorized into two groups and then further separated. With a few exceptions, they typically follow a pattern. 1 through 3 are melee moves that involve physically attacking your opponent, 4 through 6 are key attacks, which are the beams and blasts of Dragon Ball, and 0 is rarely filled. When it is a utility skill, being Kaioken 99% of the time, because DBS Future Trunks has Solar Flare there for some reason. On keyboard, just press the number for each move to activate it. On controller, here are the inputs. I'm not going to read those out, I'm just, another graphic. Power of editing! For controller users, L2 and the direction have to be pressed before the face button. Anyway, the moves can be further separated in their respective halves. Counters, physical. When you activate these moves, there's a short window in which if another player hits you with a physical move or a basic attack, you'll take no damage and perform a counterattack. These are some of the strongest moves in Nexus. Grabs, physical. These are short-ranged physical attacks. When activated, you'll perform a short wind-up animation and then damage and knock back your opponent if they're right in front of you. Not bad, but there's basically just a better option. Rushes, physical. These are up there with counters as one of the most important moves in Nexus. If activated at range, you'll play a second-long animation before boosting forwards. If you make contact with your opponent without them blocking, you'll perform an animation and deal damage, usually knocking the opponent away afterwards. The distance rushed can vary, and some are even unblockable. What's more, if you perform them in the middle of a combo, there's no windup and you just hit your opponent with the animation right away. Some grabs do this as well. A lot of these animations are cancelable too, so you're able to continue your combo without hitting the opponent away. Counter grabs, physical. This is a small group, but some of the most versatile too. Basically, a counter that if performed in a combo will perform the counter animation as a grab, so just a more versatile option than either a grab or a counter. Beams, key, the most familiar Dragon Ball attacks. These are usually chargeable if you hold down the input, and when you release, you'll fire a wave of ki. These are some of the best combo enders in the game, as most of them do decent damage, come out quickly, and travel in a straight line. That aspect does make them a bad option for neutral. However, some beams can overcome this by rotating when fully charged, becoming a heat-seeking laser of death. Blasts, ki. These are simple projectiles, usually ki orbs that are fired. A lot of them can be charged, and some of them even have homing. The non-homing ones are decent combo enders, and the homing ones are amazing for neutral pressure. Some put up large explosions that can be used as smokescreens as well. Barrages, ki. A distant relative of blast, these moves see you take a stance before firing a series of homing ki blasts. These can't be charged or extended, but they're the third group of moves that are extremely useful. Their damage is usually pretty decent, with a select few being some of the strongest attacks in the game. Their homing is extremely aggressive and either locks down enemy movement completely by forcing them to block to avoid damage, or forces the enemy to spend time and ki boosting to avoid them. Ki shield, ki. Also known as barriers, key shields are intended to be protective tools to block incoming key moves, basic key blasts, and keep players out. Unfortunately, they do not function as such half the time. They're alright, but usually you want something else taking up this slot. There's also a few that are so few in number that they don't really deserve their own categories. They also vary in slots most of the time. You have QTEs, which you complete by hitting the light attack button when this ring is right on the circle, and when you do it, it does something cool. Specials, which are unique moves that don't really have anything to compare them to, like Kaioken, Solar Flare, Magnetic Fist on Granola, stuff like that. And Sentries, or Sentry. There's really only one in the game right now, and it's Fuse Zamasu's Lightning of Absolution. Sometimes, physical moves cross over into key slots, especially when they involve ki in the rushes. A good example is DVS Broly's Gigantic Charge and Vegeto's Spirit Sword Barrage sometimes. With that out of the way, we can start to discuss how these moves fit into the game's combat. There's not really a right way to use most of these moves. If it works, it works. However, there are a few more optimal ways to activate them in order to try and deal as much damage as possible. Activating melee moves in the middle of your basic strings is extremely powerful. I would suggest learning your character's longest combo string that you can pull off, and just before the final hit, activating a melee move. This gives your opponent more time to panic and shockwave out of your basic strings, thus not wasting the ki and cooldown of your melee move. In addition to this, a lot of melee rushes and the longer grabs can be cancelled by blocking midway through, as discussed earlier, which means we can stop the knockback most of these moves cause and toss in a little bit more of these basic combos before leading into another melee super. If your timing is good, your ki is adequate, and your opponent is out of a shockwave, you can even cycle back to the first move you performed in the combo. This in theory is the longest combo you can do, but it's always going to end at some point. Your opponent either shockwaves, you knock them back, or they die. Once you knock your opponent back, you have to be really careful about burst counters. You can sit there and block, which is fine, but your opponent might either A, read the block and not burst counter, or B, not know how to burst counter. Both cases result in you sitting there, blocking, wasting valuable time for repositioning. Now, if you're comfortable in neutral, that's fine, don't get me wrong. However, most of the time, you want to keep the pressure on and be right next to someone once they recover from falling so you can immediately attack. Another option you have out of a knockback is using a ki move, but this runs the risk of getting burst countered as well, unless it's a beam, in which case you have time to block afterwards. This is the best part about beams, and it's what you should use them for most of the time. So, out of a knockback we have a few valid options. Reposition by light boosting, which is tapping shift or L2 while moving, or normal boosting, which is holding shift or L2 while moving. You can beam to deal damage, or you can do another rush to start another combo. Worst case scenario, you'll go into a clash with the rush. Maybe we should probably talk about those. Clashes happen whenever two attacks collide. The coolest and most iconic type are beam clashes, pretty rare unless both opponents agree to do one. These behave similarly to sparking a zero. You have to time your input of the X key or cross button when this gray bar is filled up mostly so that this yellow bar can fill up. Whoever has the yellow bar filled up the most at the end of the clash wins. However, if both parties max it out or they tie, the clash ends in a draw. If you win the clash, you push the beam down to the opponent and do a bit of damage. The next one's names are taken from the Trello, linked in the description, so shout out to there. It has a lot of things, like it has character movesets, it has combo strings, it has a lot of useful stuff, so definitely go check it out. These also all happen when physical attacks collide, either being basic strings or melee moves. Sparking Zero sequence. Same mechanic as beam clashing, whoever loses gets hit back. If it's a tie, both people get hit back. Fist holding. This one is a little tricky, even for me. You want to press the key or button that's currently being displayed as the yellow ring overlaps it. Same results for the first melee clash. Actually, I think all of the melee clashes have the same result. It's just switched up with teleports now and again. Button sequence. Hey, it's my favorite clash! Basically, you gotta do DDR and press the keys or buttons as they're inside of the target. Sometimes this one bullshits you and time runs out before you can hit them all, even if you've done it perfectly so far, but it's whatever. What can you do, you know? Teleport sequence and dynamic. Lumping these ones together because they have the same minigame. It's essentially a sped up version of the fist holding one, where there's a series of 5 buttons that you'll have to press as the yellow ring closes in on them. Don't get off put by the rhythm of the sound effects and the action on screen, because it does not line up with the clash. This one can also screw you up sometimes because it can end before you can press the final button, but again, what can you do? Dynamic also happens when you do a last second block that isn't a vanish against a rush or other melee moves. It might extend to basic combos too, but I don't know. Speaking of vanishes and blocking, we should talk about those. By blocking with F, R, or circle and then shooting a basic key blast with right click or triangle, you'll attempt a Z counter. You have like a a half a second window for an attack to hit you, and if it does, you'll automatically vanish and knock your opponent back. That is, unless they vanish your vanish hit and follow up with a vanish hit of their own. If you manage to vanish this vanish hit by hitting block about a third of a second before their attack hits you, it gives you a notable chunk of ki and leads into another kick. If you and your opponent go like this for a while, on the 6th total vanish, you two will initiate a random melee clash. The timing is pretty rough to learn, so my advice is to block just as their windup finishes and they start their attack. This might not be accurate, but it gives you like a sense of the time frame. You can also vanish normal attacks this way with the same timing. The clash only initiates if you miss the timing by waiting too long but are still blocking the attack. Now, if someone just turtles down and you can't get behind their block, what you want to do is, well, you have a few strategies, so let's just go over them right now. Number 1, you can fly around them in, circles, basically until they unblock and start attacking. When this happens, you can start attacking them yourself, and I'm 90% sure you'll win that most of the time. You'll win that interaction and be able to get your combo off. Number 2, just get behind them. This one is a little bit tricky for me because I need to practice it more, but essentially what you need to do is boost behind them and then hit them before their character can turn around. This will basically just start a combo with them turned around, which is pretty cool. The third one is perfect smash. Essentially what you want to do is hold down the attack button for a second. Exactly 1 second. The timing is a little hard to get at first, but you should be able to get it down with enough practice. How I think of it is when you hold down the light attack button, don't let it go, just let it play out. You'll basically want to let it go probably about 4/5 through that animation, essentially just a few milliseconds before you actually do the big hit. Once you get this timing down and actually pull it off, you'll vanish towards your opponent and hit them. But if you're right up close to them, you'll vanish behind your opponent and hit them out of their block. It's very useful to learn, so I would suggest practicing it a bit. We have doing an unblockable move, which not all characters have access to, but with trial and error and asking around a bit on the game, you can find a few. Off the top of my head, you have Gigantic Lariat, Gigantic Pressure, Gigantic Charge, a lot of gigantic moves. You have one of Goku's moves, I don't remember which one it is, but it is there, it's unblockable. You have the unblockable key moves, layered stuff like Spirit Bomb, Revenge Death Ball, Planet Crusher, Vanishing... it's not Vanishing Ball, it's Planet Buster. I'm sorry, I'm Xenoverse brained. You have Stardust Breaker, Soul Punisher, I don't remember what it's actually called in-game. And there's a few more that I'm not remembering, but are still very useful as block breaks. And then the final option is this exact combo here. You want to do 3 squares... Hold on, let me look this up to make sure I'm not actually getting it wrong. Yeah, so you want to do 3 light attacks and then a heavy attack, which you hold down the heavy attack. This will perform a shockwave that will break your opponent's guard and send them flying back. And the last piece of knowledge I want to leave you guys with is what this game is about. It is about pressure. Ultimately, if you're going for the win, you want to have a lot of pressure. That means good resource management so that you're not low on ki in a crucial position, or your most important moves are on cooldown in an important position. That means you're being mindful of your opponent's resources and making sure you don't go into a very important combo while they still have a shockwave, making sure that they're essentially out of options. And it's about reading your opponent and basically anticipating what they're gonna do next and what it is best to do to counter that thing. All of these combine together to make pressure, and you just want to keep it on. You want to do as much pressure as you can. I don't know, maybe I'll cut this part, but I think it's really important that you know that this game is about locking your opponent down with pressure. And yeah, that's it for these basic combat tips. This is really all I can get into before I start getting into the really nitty-gritty stuff, like specific character strategies, specific combo routes, and what you want to do with that stuff, like specific powerful, strong things that you can do, that you have to be in certain conditions to do them, all that stuff, like game states type of stuff. So that's that. I'll save those for the later episodes. If you want to see that, you know what to do. You know how to get me back into your feed. One last thing before the video ends, I want to talk about character choices. Play who you want to play. I may hate certain characters with a passion, but that doesn't mean I hate you for using them. If you only want to play Gogeta, go ahead and play Gogeta. If you only want to play Goku, go ahead and play Goku. There might be some people that give you shit for that choice, and while it's true that some characters are better than others, this game is about having fun more than anything. So, I hope you take what you've learned today and you apply it, and you have some really good games with some good people. And that's all it's going to be for today. Thank you for listening to me ramble about my favorite game for a few minutes. We've actually doubled our subscriber count since the last video, which was the Zamasu Lifeline. So thank you to those people who did subscribe. I really appreciate it. As a small channel, it makes me really happy that people are interested in my content and what I have to say, and interested enough to subscribe and make sure that I stay in their feed, essentially. And that makes me really happy that you guys actually care about it. So shout out to the guy who suggested this video. I have another Lifeline on the way, and if you guys want to see anything, really, if whatever you guys suggest, I'm down, I'm game, realistically. So yeah, take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one. And also, one last thing while this outro is playing here, do you guys actually like this? Because in my opinion, this is something fun that I like to do to sort of foreshadow the next video that I'm doing, and that 100% is the Lifeline. But I'm not sure, it's a little bit long, and I want to put the credits at the end, obviously, so I don't get, copyright struggling or whatever, sued. Nobody's gonna sue a channel with 8 subscribers, let's be honest. But keeping it solid right now. Do you guys like this? You might be clicking off right now. This part might have 0% viewer retention rate. I don't know. Let me know. I like doing this. This is a really good song. It's very nostalgic to me, and I just wanted to put. I like putting it in my video. So let me know. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Anyway, that's it. I'll let these roll.